I couldn't explain to the diplomatic corps why the feral predator cub was purring in the human's lap while my sedation equipment sat unused on the floor. Let me back up, because you need to understand just how impossible this situation was. My name is Kely. I've been the station's xenobiologist for 6 cycles, and I have 3 advanced degrees in cross-species physiological analysis. None of that prepared me for the human named Iris. The Kely cub had arrived 3 cycles before the incident. If you've never seen a Kely, picture your worst nightmare, then add fangs. They're quadrupedal, covered in dark fur that can deflect most small arms fire, and their claws can shred through standard hull plating. The adults stand twice the height of most species and are apex predators on 12 different worlds. This particular cub was barely past its first molting, about the size of a cargo pod, and absolutely terrified. The diplomatic corps had sent 17 messages marked urgent before the transport even docked. The cub was a goodwill gesture, part of the treaty negotiations with the Kely Dominion. Its parents were high-ranking military commanders. The cub would stay on our station for 1 standard cycle while the adults finalized trade agreements. Simple diplomatic duty, they said. Cultural exchange, they said. They did not mention that the cub had been injured during transport and was now a wounded, terrified ball of teeth and rage. I was in my lab when the transport docked. The first sign of trouble was Virgin's voice over the comm system, carefully controlled but with an edge I'd never heard before. Xenobiology to docking bay 5, immediately. I grabbed my medical kit and ran. By the time I arrived, there were claw marks gouged into the walls. 3 security officers stood at a safe distance, stun weapons drawn but not firing. The cub was backed into a corner, one front paw held awkwardly off the ground, and it was making a sound I can only describe as a combination of hissing and screaming. Blood matted the fur around its injured paw. Virgin saw me and gestured with 2 of his appendages. It won't let anyone approach. We tried the standard calming frequencies. We tried food. We tried leaving it alone. Nothing works. I studied the cub from a safe distance. Its eyes were wide, pupils dilated with fear and pain. The paw was clearly infected, swollen to twice its normal size. If we didn't treat it soon, the infection would spread. If the infection spread and the cub died on our station, the treaty would collapse and we'd probably start a war. No pressure. We need to sedate it, I said, pulling out the tranquilizer gun. Durvan, what's the dosage for a Kely juvenile? Durvan consulted his datapad, mandibles clicking nervously. The medical database has very little information on Kely physiology. They don't share medical data freely. I can estimate based on mass and metabolism, but I could easily kill it with the wrong dose. Estimate carefully, Virgin said. Dead diplomat's child equals dead us. I loaded the tranquilizer while Durvan calculated. The cub watched every movement, tracking us like prey. Its good paws dug into the deck plating. Every few seconds, it would try to put weight on the injured paw and let out another one of those awful sounds. Ready, I said, raising the tranquilizer gun. That's when the human walked around the corner. Iris was new to the station, only been here 2 weeks. She worked in cargo processing, completely unrelated to xenobiology or medicine or diplomacy. She had brown skin, dark hair pulled back in some kind of functional tie, and she was carrying a box of freight manifests. She stopped when she saw all of us standing there with weapons drawn. "What's going on?" she asked. "Stay back," Virgin commanded. "Dangerous predator, injured and aggressive." Iris looked past us to the cub, Her expression changed in a way I couldn't quite read. She set down her box. "Oh, the poor thing," she said. "Poor thing." She called a killing machine that had just tried to disembowel 3 security officers a poor thing. She started walking toward the cub. "Stop!" I shouted. "That creature can tear you apart!" She didn't stop. She didn't even slow down. She walked right past our security perimeter, past the blast shields we'd erected, past every single safety protocol, and approached the cub with her hands visible and empty. The cub snarled at her. She kept walking. "Somebody stun her," Virgin hissed. "She's going to get killed and create an even worse diplomatic incident." But none of us moved. We were frozen, watching this bizarre human walk calmly toward her own death. Iris stopped about 3 body lengths from the cub. Then she did something that made absolutely no sense. She sat down on the floor. Just sat down, cross-legged, and waited. The cub stared at her. Its snarling decreased in volume but didn't stop entirely. It shifted its weight, clearly uncertain. Iris made a sound. It was soft, rhythmic, almost melodic. Nothing like any communication language I'd ever studied. She kept making the sound, and slowly, impossibly, the cub's aggression displays began to decrease. Its ears, which had been flat against its skull, rotated slightly forward. The fur along its spine relaxed. "What is she doing?" Durvan whispered. "I have no idea," I admitted. After what felt like an eternity but was probably only 5 minutes, Iris slowly extended one hand toward the cub. Palm up, fingers relaxed. She was still making those soft sounds. The cub sniffed in her direction, then looked away, then looked back. Its whole body was tense, ready to attack or flee. Iris didn't move except to keep her hand extended. She was incredibly patient. She barely seemed to breathe. The cub took one small step forward, then another. It stretched its neck out and sniffed her hand. Its nostrils flared, processing her scent. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the cub's entire posture changed. The aggression melted away like ice in a solar flare. It moved closer to Iris, favoring its injured paw, and pressed its massive head against her knee. She smiled and began moving her hand through its fur in long, gentle strokes. "There we go," she said softly. "You're just scared, aren't you? And that paw hurts. I know, we'll fix it." I realized my mouth was hanging open. Virgin had lowered his weapon entirely, both appendages slack with shock. Durvan had dropped his datapad. Iris looked back at us over her shoulder. "Do you have medical supplies? This infection looks pretty bad." I managed to close my mouth long enough to nod. I grabbed the medical kit and slowly approached, certain the cub would attack as soon as I got close. But it barely looked at me. Its attention was focused entirely on Iris, who kept making those soft sounds and moving her hands through its fur. "Put the kit down there," she said, pointing to a spot near her. "I'll need antiseptic, bandages, and probably antibiotics if you have something compatible with its biology." I set down the kit and backed away. Iris opened it, moving slowly and deliberately. The cub watched her hands, but showed no aggression. She pulled out the antiseptic spray and held it where the cub could see it. "This is going to sting a little," she told the cub, as if it could understand standard. "But it'll help, I promise." She sprayed the antiseptic directly onto the infected paw. The cub flinched and made a small whining sound, but it didn't attack. It didn't even pull its paw away. It just pressed harder against Iris and let her work. "Good baby," Iris said. "Such a brave baby." "Yes, you are." Baby. She was calling a diplomatic asset worth 3-star systems a baby. She cleaned the wound with practiced efficiency, her movements confident and sure. She'd clearly done this before, though I couldn't imagine where a human cargo processor had learned to treat alien predators. She applied antibiotic gel, wrapped the paw in clean bandages, and secured everything with medical tape. The whole process took maybe 10 minutes. The cub let her do all of it without a single aggressive display. When she finished, she sat back and looked at the cub with satisfaction. There. All better. Now you need rest and lots of fluids. When did you last eat? The cub tilted its head at her, then did something that stopped my cardiovascular system entirely. It purred. I didn't know Kely could purr. According to all my training, they couldn't. They had no physiological mechanism for it. Their throat structure was designed for roaring and intimidation vocalizations, not for sounds of contentment. But this cub was definitely purring, a deep rumbling sound that vibrated through the deck plating. Iris laughed, a pleasant sound that seemed to make the cub purr even louder. She scratched behind its ears, which I only then realized were positioned similarly to certain Earth predators I'd seen in database images. "You're just a big, scary puppy, aren't you?" she said. Virgan found his voice first. "How did you do that?" Iris looked up, seeming surprised that we were all still there. "Do what?" "That creature was trying to kill everything that moved," Virgan said. "We were about to sedate it. You just walked up and it let you touch it." Iris shrugged, one hand still moving through the cub's fur. "It's a scared animal with a painful injury. Animals act aggressive when they're frightened and hurt. You just have to show them you're not a threat and that you want to help." "It's not an animal," I said, my voice coming out strangled. "It's a Kely, apex predator, sentient species, diplomatic guest." "Sure," Iris said, "but it's also a kid, and kids, no matter what species, need to feel safe. His parents aren't here. He's in pain. Everything smells wrong. Of course he's going to be defensive." She said it like it was the most obvious thing in the universe. Like 6 cycles of xenobiological training were irrelevant compared to common sense. The cub shifted position and laid down with its head in Iris's lap. It was still purring. Its eyes were starting to close. "He's exhausted," Iris said. "Probably hasn't slept properly since the injury. Poor thing's been running on adrenaline and fear. He needs a quiet place to rest and recover." "We have medical containment," Durvan offered. "Is it comfortable?" Iris asked. "It's sterile and secure." "That's not what I asked. Does it have soft surfaces, proper temperature regulation, dim lighting?" Durvan looked at me. I looked at Virgan. None of us had considered comfort when setting up containment for a dangerous predator. "I'll stay with him tonight," Iris said. "Make sure he settles properly. Can someone bring me some water and whatever you've been trying to feed him?" "You can't stay here all night," Virgan protested. "You have duties." "I process cargo manifests," Iris said. "The cargo isn't going anywhere. This little guy needs help now." That's when the alarm started. The cub's vital monitors, which had been screaming warnings about elevated stress hormones since it arrived, suddenly flatlined on the stress indicators. According to the readouts, the cub's biochemistry had shifted to a state of complete calm. For a Kely, that was supposed to be impossible. Their species maintained constant low-level stress hormones as part of their predatory nature. 0 stress hormones should have meant the cub was dying or already dead, but the cub was very clearly alive, purring in the human's lap with its eyes half closed in contentment. Durvan stared at his medical scanner. "This can't be right. The readings must be malfunctioning." Check again, I said. He checked again, then a third time. The readings were accurate. The cub's entire biochemistry had shifted to something that shouldn't exist in Kely physiology. I looked at Iris, who was humming softly to the cub, and appeared completely unconcerned that she'd just broken every known law of Kely biology. The alarm got louder. Red lights started flashing throughout the docking bay. Somewhere in the station, someone was definitely panicking about the impossible readings. And that's when I realized my nice, quiet job studying alien microorganisms was about to get very, very complicated. The medical team arrived expecting to find a dead cub. Instead, they found Iris sitting on the floor, scrolling through her datapad with one hand, while the other rested on the sleeping predator's head. Durvan tried to explain the situation to his superior, a medical coordinator named Belnix, who had 4 specializations in trauma response and absolutely no patience for impossible scenarios. The stress hormones are at 0, Belnix said, examining the scanner readings with mounting disbelief. 0. That means neural death. That means the cub should be comatose or worse. The cub is fine, I said, gesturing to where it was snoring softly against Iris's leg. Then your equipment is broken. We checked it 6 times. Belnix looked at Iris. What did you give it? Antiseptic spray and antibiotic gel, Iris said, without looking up from her datapad. Same stuff you'd use on any infected wound. Oh, and I cleaned out some debris that was stuck in there. Looked like metal fragments from the transport crate. I mean, what sedative? What medication did you administer to achieve this neural state? I didn't give it anything. I just bandaged its paw and sat with it until it calmed down. Belnix's expression went through several configurations, none of them pleasant. You're telling me that you, a cargo processor with no medical training, achieved something that should be chemically impossible by sitting on the floor. I'm a vet tech, actually, Iris said. Well, I was, before I took this job. Worked in emergency animal care for 6 years. This isn't an animal, Belnix said slowly, like explaining something to a particularly dim child. This is a Kely juvenile, sentient species, complex neural structure. You can't just treat it like some domestic creature. Iris finally looked up from her datapad. With all due respect, sentient adults aren't the same as their kids. Human children aren't just small adults. We develop cognition over time. Maybe Kely do the same? That's not how biology works. Isn't it, though? Iris asked, then returned her attention to her datapad like she'd lost interest in the conversation. Belnix turned to me. I need to examine the cub properly. Full medical scan, neural imaging, biochemical analysis. Go ahead, I said. Belnix approached the cub with a medical scanner extended. The moment the device got within 2 body lengths, the cub's eyes snapped open, its lips pulled back from its fangs. The purring stopped, replaced by a low warning growl that made my internal organs vibrate. Belnix froze. It was just sleeping peacefully. It was sleeping peacefully. With me, Iris said. It doesn't know you. You're a stranger with weird equipment coming at it while it's vulnerable. I'm a medical professional. It's a scared kid. Kids don't care about credentials. The growling got louder. Belnix backed away slowly, and the cub's aggression displays decreased proportionally. When Belnix was back with the rest of us, the cub put its head back in Iris's lap and closed its eyes. Fascinating, I muttered, making notes on my own datapad. Belnix was less fascinated and more frustrated. We need those medical readings. The diplomatic corps is demanding hourly updates on the cub's condition. So take readings from here, Iris suggested. Long-range scanners should work fine. That's not proper protocol. Neither is stressing out an injured patient, Iris said. But here we are. Over the next 2 hours, we attempted various approaches. Durvan tried approaching with food. The cub snarled at him until Iris took the food and offered it herself, at which point the cub ate peacefully. Virgan attempted to scan from different angles. Every time the cub detected the attention and became defensive. It only stayed calm when Iris was the one interacting with it. I started researching human-animal care practices, digging through cultural databases that most xenobiologists ignored because they dealt with non-sentient creatures. What I found made no sense in the context of our current situation. Humans apparently had thousands of years of experience domesticating predators, turning them into companions through something called bonding. But bonding took time. Months or years of carefully building trust. Iris had achieved it in less than an hour with a species she'd never encountered before. The diplomatic corps sent their representative, the officious coordinator, who introduced himself as Nixra, and immediately began asking questions nobody could answer. "Why are the medical readings impossible?" Nixra demanded. "Because the human made them impossible," I said. "That's not an acceptable answer." "It's the only answer I have." Nixra looked at Iris. "You will teach our medical staff your techniques. The Krelthi delegation expects professional care for their offspring. We cannot have it dependent on a single individual." "Sure," Iris said. "I can show you what I do, but I'm not sure it'll help." "Why not?" "Because what I do isn't really teachable. It's about reading body language, responding to emotional signals, building trust. It takes practice and instinct." "Show us anyway," Nixra said. So Iris demonstrated. She explained how she'd approached with her hands visible to show she was unarmed, how she'd sat down to make herself less threatening, how she'd waited for the cub to come to her instead of forcing interaction, how she'd used soft sounds to communicate calm. I watched Belnik's attempt to replicate the technique. The medical coordinator approached slowly, hands visible, and sat down at a careful distance. The cub watched with suspicious eyes. Belnik's made what was probably meant to be a calming sound, but came out more like a mechanical wheeze. The cub's ears went flat. Warning growl. "Why isn't it working?" Belnik's asked. "You're too tense," Iris said. "Animals can sense fear and uncertainty. You're broadcasting anxiety. I'm not anxious. I'm professionally cautious." Same thing to the cub. Durvan tried next, then 2 other medical staff members. Every single attempt ended the same way. The cub would tolerate their presence as long as they stayed back, but the moment anyone tried to interact directly, it became defensive. "This is ridiculous," Nixra said. "One human cannot possess a skill that none of our trained professionals can replicate." "And yet," Iris said, scratching the cub behind its ears while it purred like a small engine. I was starting to develop a theory, one that made me deeply uncomfortable. Humans were persistence predators on their homeworld. They hunted by tracking prey over long distances, reading behavioral cues, understanding the patterns of other species. Maybe Iris wasn't doing anything special by human standards. Maybe humans were just naturally better at cross-species emotional reading than we'd ever given them credit for. It was a theory that would require me to rewrite significant portions of accepted xenobiological doctrine. So naturally, I kept it to myself. 3 more hours passed. The cub stayed calm as long as Iris was present. Station Command was getting nervous about having a cargo processor spend her entire shift sitting on a docking bay floor. Iris ignored all suggestions that she return to her assigned duties. The cub needs consistency right now, she said. Moving it or leaving it alone will undo all the progress. Progress toward what? Nixra asked. Feeling safe. Once it feels safe, it'll be easier for other people to work with it. But that takes time. We don't have time. The adult delegation arrives in 8 cycles. That's when the second alarm started. This one wasn't medical. This one was the priority diplomatic signal, the one reserved for emergency situations that could start wars. Virgan's comm device lit up. The security chief listened for a moment, and I watched the color drain from his face, which was impressive because his species didn't have color-changing capabilities. The second cub is arriving early, Virgan said quietly. Transport just entered the system. It'll dock in 3 hours. Second cub, I asked. Sibling. The report said it was even more traumatized than this one. Attacked 3 crew members during transport. They had to use stun weapons to get it into the crate. We all looked at Iris, who was still calmly petting the now sleeping cub. You want me to help with that one too? She asked. Can you? Nixra asked, and there was something almost like desperation in the question. Iris considered for a moment. Maybe. Depends on how badly traumatized it is. If they've been using stun weapons on it, it's going to associate everyone with pain and fear. That's going to be much harder to overcome. The cub in her lap stirred, sensing the tension in the room. Iris immediately returned her attention to it, making those soft sounds until it settled again. 3 hours until the second cub arrived. 3 hours to figure out if Iris's impossible abilities would work twice, or if we were about to have 2 traumatized predators on station instead of 1. I looked at my sedation equipment, still sitting unused on the floor where I'd left it hours ago, and wondered if we'd be lucky enough to avoid needing it again. The answer, as it turned out, was no. The second cub arrived in a reinforced containment crate with warning labels in 6 languages. Through the observation window, I could see it pacing back and forth, limping on its back leg. Its fur was matted with dried blood and what looked like burn marks from stun weapons. Virgan had cleared the entire cargo bay and stationed 8 security officers at various positions. We're not taking chances with this one. The transport crew said it nearly killed someone. Because they kept stunning it, Iris said, studying the cub through the window. Look at those burns. They must have hit it a dozen times. It was attacking, Virgan said defensively. It was terrified. There's a difference. The first cub, who Iris had somehow managed to get moved to a temporary habitat near the docking bay, was making distressed sounds. It could probably smell its sibling through the walls. They need to see each other, Iris said. Absolutely not, Belnick said. We don't know how they'll react. They could attack each other. They could attack us. They could coordinate an attack, which would be exponentially worse. They're siblings. They've been separated during a traumatic experience. Letting them reunite will help calm them both. Or it will give us 2 aggressive predators instead of 1 manageable one. Iris looked at me. Kilvan, you've been studying the first cub's behavior. Do you think it's aggressive? I considered the question carefully. No. Defensive when threatened, but not inherently aggressive. Its baseline behavior with you present is remarkably docile. There, Iris said. So we let them see each other. Nixra, who had been watching from a safe distance, stepped forward. The diplomatic corps cannot authorize that risk. Then the diplomatic corps can explain to the Krelthi delegation why their cubs are traumatized, wrecks instead of healthy youngsters, Iris said, and I was surprised by the edge in her voice. These are kids. Scared, hurt kids. We can help them, or we can make it worse. Choose. There was a long silence. Then Nixra made a gesture of reluctant agreement. Virgin ordered the first cub's habitat moved to where it could see the containment crate. The moment the two cubs spotted each other, they both started making sounds I'd never heard before. Not aggressive, something else. Something almost like crying. They're calling for each other, Iris said softly. We need to let them out. The second cub will attack, Virgin said. It might, but I don't think it will. Not if its sibling is there. You don't think? I'm reading behavior patterns. I could be wrong. But keeping them separated is definitely causing harm. Letting them reunite might cause harm. I'll take might over definitely. Nobody seemed to know how to argue with that logic. I'll take responsibility, Iris said. If this goes wrong, it's on me. She walked toward the containment crate before anyone could stop her. The second cub saw her approaching and backed into the corner, lips pulled back, showing every single one of its impressive fangs. The burn marks on its hide looked worse up close. Hey there, Iris said in that same soft voice she'd used on the first cub. I know. Everyone's been terrible to you. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry they hurt you. The cub snarled at her. She didn't flinch. I'm going to open this crate now, she said. You can come out whenever you're ready. Your sibling is right over there. See? They want to see you. She reached for the crate release. Virgin raised his stun weapon. I held my breath. The crate door opened. The second cub stayed pressed into the corner, watching Iris with terrified, angry eyes. Iris stepped back and sat down on the floor. Same position as before. Hands visible. Non-threatening. Then she just waited. 1 minute passed. 2. 5. The cub didn't move. The first cub was making those crying sounds, pressing against the transparent wall of its habitat. Please, Iris said quietly. Your sibling needs you. You need each other. Nobody here is going to hurt you anymore. I promise. 10 minutes. 15. My legs were getting tired from standing, but Iris didn't move from her seated position. Her patience was incomprehensible. At 20 minutes, the second cub took one small step forward, then stopped, then another step. It was limping badly on its back leg. That's it, Iris murmured. Take your time. No rush. The cub emerged fully from the crate, moving slowly, eyes locked on Iris. Every muscle in its body was tensed for attack or flight. Then the first cub made a sound, and the second cub's head whipped around. The two cubs stared at each other. Some kind of recognition passed between them, something beyond what any scanner could measure. The second cub forgot about Iris entirely. It limped rapidly toward its sibling's habitat. They pressed against opposite sides of the transparent wall, touching as close as they could get, making those crying sounds together. Open it, Iris said. Let them touch. If they attack each other, Belnick started. They won't. Open it. Virgin made the decision, overriding the habitat controls. The barrier retracted. The two cubs collided in what looked like a violent impact, but was actually an embrace. They wrapped around each other, making sounds that were definitely not aggressive, grooming each other's fur, checking each other for injuries. It was the most emotionally complex behavior I'd ever witnessed from any species. We really need to reconsider our classification systems, I said to nobody in particular. The cubs eventually separated and curled up together in a pile of fur and limbs, but the second cub was still tense, still hurting. Its burned hide probably felt like fire. The injured leg wasn't getting better on its own. Iris stood up slowly and approached the cubs. The first cub saw her and made a welcoming sound. The second cub tensed immediately, ready to defend. The first cub did something extraordinary. It moved between Iris and its sibling, not aggressively, but almost like it was introducing them. It pressed against Iris's leg, then turned back to its sibling and made a series of soft sounds. "Your sibling trusts me," Iris said to the second cub. "That should tell you something." She sat down next to the pile of cubs. The first cub immediately draped itself across her lap. The second cub watched warily, but didn't attack. Iris opened her medical kit. The second cub's eyes tracked every movement. She pulled out the antiseptic spray and held it where both cubs could see it. "This is going to help," she said. "I used it on your sibling, remember? When I fixed the paw?" The first cub, as if understanding, held up its bandaged paw and made a cheerful sound. Iris reached slowly toward the second cub's burned hide. The cub growled. She kept moving, infinitely patient, until her hand made contact with the matted fur. The cub flinched, but didn't attack. The first cub made encouraging sounds. For the next hour, I watched Iris treat the second cub's injuries while both cubs remained calm. She cleaned the burn wounds, applied healing gel, bandaged the injured leg. She talked the entire time, explaining what she was doing, making those soft sounds whenever the second cub showed signs of stress. By the end, both cubs were purring. Both were pressed against her, seeking contact and comfort. The second cub's vital signs showed the same impossible readings as the first. 0 stress hormones. Complete calm. "This is going to revolutionize xenobiology," I said. "Or destroy it," Durvan added. "Everything we know about Kely physiology says this shouldn't be possible." "Then maybe everything we know is wrong," I said. The cubs fell asleep together, with Iris sitting in the middle of them like some kind of interspecies parent. She looked tired but satisfied. "How long are you planning to stay with them?" I asked. "As long as they need me," she said. "That could be days, weeks. You have a job. The cargo will survive. These cubs might not without proper care." That's when Virgin's comm device went off again. He listened, and his expression went through several concerning configurations. "The adult Kely delegation just entered the system," he said. "They'll be here in 6 hours." 6 hours? Nixra's voice came out as a strangled sound. "They're not supposed to arrive for 8 more cycles." Apparently they heard about the cubs' conditions during transport and accelerated their schedule. We all looked at the 2 cubs, peacefully sleeping with a human cargo processor. The cubs who should have been in proper medical containment. The cubs who should have been demonstrating the station's ability to provide appropriate care for diplomatic guests. The cubs who were instead treated like pets. The adult Kely were about to arrive and find their children playing in a cargo bay with someone who had absolutely no diplomatic credentials. This was going to end very badly. 6 hours turned into a frantic scramble to make the cargo bay look less like a disaster zone and more like a proper medical facility. It didn't work. You can't polish a diplomatic crisis. The Kely ship docked with a precision that suggested military training. Through the observation window, I watched 3 massive forms emerge from the transport. The adults made the cubs look like tiny toys. Each one stood easily 3 times my height, their dark fur rippling over muscles that could probably crush our hull plating. Their eyes glowed with an intelligence that made me deeply uncomfortable. Virgin had positioned security throughout the bay, though we all knew the weapons would be useless if the adults decided to attack. Nixra was practically vibrating with anxiety, running through diplomatic protocols on a datapad, while sweat formed on surfaces that shouldn't produce sweat. "Where are the cubs?" I asked Iris. "Still sleeping. I didn't want to wake them before their parents arrived. Seemed cruel." "Seemed cruel," I repeated. "We're about to start an interstellar incident and you're worried about sleep schedules." "Good sleep is important for healing," Iris said calmly. The airlock finished cycling. The 3 adult Krelthi entered the bay, and I felt my survival instincts screaming at me to run. The one in front, slightly larger than the others, wore some kind of ceremonial harness that marked her as high-ranking. Her eyes swept the room, cataloging threats, and landed on Nixra. "I am Matriarch Velcra," she said in heavily accented standard. "Where are my children?" Her voice was like rocks grinding together. Each word carried the weight of potential violence. Nixra stepped forward, attempting to look confident and failing spectacularly. "Honored Matriarch, your offspring are receiving medical care. They sustained injuries during transport, but our staff has been working tirelessly to ensure their well-being." "Show me. Now." There was no room for negotiation in those words. Nixra led the way to the temporary habitat area, the rest of us following at a safe distance. I found myself walking next to Iris, who seemed completely unbothered by the massive predators behind us. "Aren't you scared?" I whispered. "Of what? Parents checking on their kids? That's just good parenting." We rounded the corner to where the cubs were sleeping. Both were curled together in a pile of blankets that Iris had somehow acquired, bandages visible on their injuries, breathing peacefully. Matriarch Velcra stopped. The 2 other adults flanked her, all 3 staring at their young. For a moment, nobody moved. Then Velcra made a sound. It was low, rumbling, nothing like the communication she'd used with us. The cubs' ears twitched. Their eyes opened. They saw their parents and scrambled up, limping and moving stiffly but making excited sounds. The reunion was chaotic. The cubs rushed to their parents, who dropped to all 4s to meet them. There was fur and fangs and sounds that ranged from gentle to fierce. The adults examined their offspring, sniffing them, checking their injuries, making sounds that I couldn't interpret, but clearly meant something. After several minutes, Velcra stood and turned to face us. Her eyes were cold. "Who treated their wounds?" she demanded. Nixra gestured weakly toward our medical staff. "Our team worked around the clock." "No," Velcra interrupted. "I can smell them. Human scent, strong, fresh. Who is the human?" All eyes turned to Iris. She stepped forward, seemingly unaware that she was walking toward something that could kill her with one swipe. "I did," Iris said. "I'm Iris. I work in cargo processing, but I used to be a vet tech back home." "Vet tech," Velcra repeated slowly. "You treat animals." "Yes." "You treated my children like animals." The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Virgan's hand moved toward his weapon. Nixra looked like he might pass out. I was calculating how quickly I could reach the emergency bulkhead controls. Iris didn't look scared. She looked confused. "I treated them like hurt kids who needed care," she said. "Was I not supposed to?" Velcra moved forward. Each step was deliberate, measured. She stopped directly in front of Iris, looming over her, close enough that I could see Iris's hair moving in the Krelthi's breath. "Explain your treatment methods," Velcra said. Okay." They were scared and in pain, so I approached calmly, let them come to me, cleaned their wounds, bandaged them, stayed with them until they felt safe. Basic trauma care for frightened animals. Frightened youngsters. Sorry, I'm not sure what terminology to use. You called them animals. I called them kids who needed help. The animal thing is just my background talking. I didn't mean any offense. Velcro stared at Iris for what felt like an eternity. Then she did something I absolutely did not expect. She laughed. It was a terrifying sound, like boulders falling down a mountain, but it was definitely laughter. You, she said, are the first being on this station to understand my children. I'm sorry? Iris said. Velcro turned to address all of us. Kely cubs are not sapient. They do not develop full consciousness until their third molting. Until then, they are animals. Intelligent animals, yes, but animals nonetheless. They need animal care, comfort, touch, security, not diplomatic protocols. The silence that followed was absolute. I felt my entire understanding of Kely biology dissolving. Your medical staff treated them like small adults, Velcro continued. Kept them in sterile containment, used devices and instruments, maintained professional distance. Everything you did traumatized them further. The human treated them like the non-sapient youngsters they are. She gave them what they actually needed. Nixra found his voice. But the protocols, the cultural exchange guidelines, everything we were told suggested. Your protocols were written by bureaucrats who have never raised cubs, Velcro said dismissively. We do not share this information widely because other species find it disturbing. They want to believe our children are born with full consciousness. It makes them more comfortable. But comfort does not help cubs heal. She looked back at Iris. You stayed with them. I can smell it. You spent many hours in physical contact. They needed someone, Iris said. They were scared and hurt. Of course I stayed. Our own staff, trained in cub care, use sedation and isolation to manage injuries. It is effective but traumatic. You used presence and patience. My children's stress markers are lower than I have ever seen in transported cubs. How did you know to do this? Iris shrugged. I didn't know anything about your species. I just treated them like any scared animal would need to be treated. Stay calm, move slow, let them set the pace. Provide comfort. Works for dogs, cats, horses, most mammals really. Figured it was worth trying. Dogs, cats, horses, Velcro repeated. Your species domesticated predators. Yeah, thousands of years ago. We're pretty good at working with animals now. One of the other adults, who hadn't spoken yet, made a sound to get Velcro's attention. They had a brief exchange in their own language, too fast for my translator to catch. Then Velcro turned back to Iris. My military advisor wishes to know if you would be willing to consult on our cub transport protocols. We lose many young to transport trauma. Your methods could save lives. Oh, Iris said, looking surprised. Sure, I guess. I'd be happy to help. We will compensate you appropriately. Name your price. Iris thought about it. Do you have food on your ship? Real food, not station rations? Velcro's expression was difficult to read, but I think she was amused. Yes. Then pay me in interesting snacks. I'm tired of eating protein bars. The matriarch laughed again, that boulder falling sound. Agreed. You will have our finest preserved meats. Nixra looked like he wanted to protest the completely informal negotiation, but wisely kept quiet. The cubs, apparently tired of being ignored, came over to Iris and started pressing against her legs. She smiled and scratched behind their ears. Both started, purring immediately. The adult Kely watched with what I was slowly learning to recognize as approval. You will stay with them until we depart? Velcro asked. If that's okay with my supervisor, Iris said, looking at Virgan. Virgan nodded quickly. Consider yourself reassigned to diplomatic support duties. Great. though I should probably get my data pad from cargo processing. I was in the middle of an inventory check. The fact that she was worried about inventory while standing next to apex predators who had just redefined our understanding of their entire species was so perfectly Iris that I almost laughed. The next cycle passed quietly. Iris spent most of it with the cubs and their parents, explaining her care techniques, demonstrating handling methods, discussing what the cubs needed versus what protocol demanded. I watched from a distance, taking notes, realizing that my dissertation on xenobiological development would need significant revisions. When the Kely delegation finally departed, both cubs were healthy, happy, and actually sad to leave Iris. They made those crying sounds again, until Velcro firmly guided them onto the ship. Before leaving, the matriarch approached Iris one final time. "You have a gift, rare among any species. Do not waste it processing cargo." "I like cargo processing," Iris said. "It's peaceful." "Peace is overrated," Velcro said, then disappeared into her ship. After they left, Nixra approached me with a datapad. "We're creating a new position, interspecies juvenile care specialist. The human is being transferred effective immediately." "Does Iris know about this?" I asked. "Not yet. But after what happened, we can't risk another species young arriving without proper care protocols." I found Iris in the cargo bay, back at her original workstation, checking freight, manifests like nothing had happened. 2 weeks later, I passed by the new juvenile care facility and saw her training a group of medical staff, demonstrating proper approach techniques on a very patient simulation dummy. There was a half-eaten package of Kely preserved meats on her desk. She was explaining something about body language while casually eating what most species would consider a terrifying delicacy. I realized then that the universe was much stranger and more wonderful than any of my degrees had prepared me for, and that sometimes the most important expertise came from the most unexpected places. Iris looked up and waved at me. "Hey, Chilvan. Want to help test the new habitat temperature settings? I need someone with better heat sensors than mine." I agreed, because at this point, why not? My nice quiet job studying microorganisms was gone forever anyway. Might as well embrace the chaos.